When you search them on YouTube, it's the first song that comes up. I'm Ruby Carr, and this is the story of the Smashing Pumpkins, 1979.
You know the songs.
Just making people feel something.
It's been a pleasure to work on this song with her.
But do you know the history?
It's a struggle making any kind of record.
I don't always have the direction or concept.
This is Encore, an in-depth look at the stories behind the music. Here's iHeartRadio's Ruby Carr.
A great pop song can evoke a universal feeling that just about every listener feels. You can make a case for almost any song and any feeling, but has a song ever encapsulated the feeling of being a teenager as accurately as the Smashing Pumpkins' 1979? When he wrote it, at the age of 28, mind you, frontman Billy Corgan was looking to express what he felt in his adolescence, all of the angst, pain, fear, excitement, happiness, and endless possibilities you face when you're a teenager. And he nailed it. What's funny is that when it was released in 1995, it sounded unlike anything else the band had recorded. This alternative rock band, often associated with the grunge scene and loud guitars, put out a soft, Mellon Collie tune featuring synthesizers and drum loops. Even funnier is the fact that 1979 became the biggest song of their career, finding new audiences as the generations turn. Yes, it's as popular with Gen Z and even Gen Alpha as it is with the Gen X that made it a hit in the first place. I mean, my daughter isn't into it just yet, but I'm sure she's going to throw it on after the Wiggles. The story of the Smashing Pumpkins actually starts in St. Petersburg, Florida. Billy Corgan was a tall, lanky, long-haired teenager who grew up in Chicago mostly with his stepmother. Although he had an estranged relationship with his father, it was through his old man's musical background that Billy developed an interest in the guitar. But it was really because he saw his friend playing a guitar that Billy picked one up, as he told Much Music.
It was one of those, shining moments in my life where I went into a friend's basement. There he was, standing there playing the guitar, and the two girls were... And that was it. The light bulb went off. I thought, wow, I really got to play rock.
Though as he reached 18, Billy felt the music scene in Chicago offered nothing in the way of his tastes. Billy listened to classic rock like Black Sabbath and Jimi Hendrix and modern alternative acts like The Cure and Depeche Mode. But Chicago was primarily known for its blues and electronic music. So he and his band relocated to Florida. The band was called The Marked after the port wine stains that both Billy and his bandmate Ron Rosing had on their bodies. Influenced by 60s psychedelia and goth, The Marked tried to combine loud and quiet music, but only survived a couple of years before breaking up because, as Billy would tell Music Plus, they weren't very good.
I used to have a band, and it was really horrible, and then we broke up, and then I decided, I want to have a band like this and not like this, and then that's how I kind of formed the band.
Feeling a bit defeated, Billy went back to Chicago in 1987 and moved in with his dad. But he had a new band in mind, or at least the name for it, Smashing Pumpkins. Billy would explain to author Randy Reisfeld that smashing is not a verb, it's an adjective. It's not like we like to smash pumpkins or anything. I like the idea of smashing being aggressive as well as wonderful, but it could have been any vegetable. Through a friend, Billy met a guitarist named James Iha, who was playing in a band called Snake Train. The two of them started writing scary little doomy goth pop songs together, and James soon joined Smashing Pumpkins. They recorded some songs with Ron Rosing from Billy's previous band on drums, but Billy and James replaced him with a drum machine. Yeah, machines were replacing humans even back in the 80s. With Billy on bass and James on guitar, Smashing Pumpkins played their first ever gig as a duo at Club 21 using the drum machine, but they wouldn't stay a duo for long. While Billy was at a club called the Avalon, he got into an argument with a girl named Darcy Retzky over the music. As it turned out, Darcy owned a bass, which was convenient because Billy was looking for a bassist so he could play guitar. Well, Darcy had to learn how to play the instrument first, but Billy welcomed her into the band anyway. They were still into the idea of keeping the drum machine. That is until the owner of the Cabaret Metro told them he'd let them play his club if and only if they lost the drum machine and hired an actual drummer. So he recommended a local jazz drummer named Jimmy Chamberlain, who had actually seen Smashing Pumpkins play an atrocious show at the Avalon. However, when Billy asked him to join, he still said yes, since he thought Billy could write a good song. Their first official concert as a four-piece would be at the Metro in October, just 1 month before they would open up for Jane's Addiction, one of America's hottest new bands. Big things were on the horizon. In May 1990, Smashing Pumpkins released their first proper single, I Am One, and were starting to create some buzz. They were approached by the Seattle-based label Sub Pop, which was starting to get a lot of attention for its roster, which included the likes of Mudhoney, Soundgarden, and an up-and-coming band called Nirvana. Or is it pronounced Nirvana? You know what? You'll have to listen to the Smells Like Teen Spirit episode in the archives to find out, I guess. Although they recorded a single for Sub Pop called Tristessa, Smashing Pumpkins decided to sign with the more established Caroline Records, a pseudo-indie label operated by Virgin/EMI. Here is Billy Corgan telling Much Music about that decision.
I mean, for us, it was Sub Pop or Caroline. I mean, it was that kind of decision, and Caroline was just better for us. And I mean, it's just in the 2 months that our album's been out and the 6 months that we work with Caroline, they've completely proven that that's correct, that we made the right decision.
With a label to back them, Smashing Pumpkins were all set to begin recording their debut album. But they needed a producer to guide them along the way. For the Tristessa single, they worked with a producer named Butch Vig, a guy from Madison, Wisconsin, who was known for working with heavier alternative rock bands. The band liked Butch because he was a good old Midwestern American dude, but he also reminded them of Canada. Or so James and Darcy told Music Plus.
He's kind of a Canadian guy. He reminds me of like a total like Bob and
from Wisconsin.
Right, it's close enough.
People from Wisconsin sound like they're from Canada.
He's like Bob and Doug. He's
not
totally
French Canadian.
He's like, yeah, hey there, I'll have a Frosty. He's totally like that.
Billy had really connected with Butch when they recorded the Sub Pop single with him and felt Butch was the right guy to record their album due to his instincts. Here is Billy explaining to Much Music about choosing Butch.
Well, he was actually referred to us by our first label guy, Mike Potential, and he just said that I think this is the guy you should really go with. So I went out and bought some of Butch's records, and at the time, the thing that impressed me most with him was just his drum sound. I mean, I've learned a lot more about what he does that makes great records, but that was the thing that really stuck out. And so we did our Sub Pop single, and Sub Pop was very high on the idea because they kind of are very into localization of talent, you know, Midwest bands with Midwest producers, something like that, which I think is great. And he's just the nicest guy in the world, and he's so intelligent and has such great ears that, you know, he's the type of guy that very few people know about him now, but he'll be the type of guy that will be making like huge records in a couple of years.
So that was Billy from all the way back in 1991 talking about how he predicted Butch Vig would go on to produce even bigger records than the Pumpkins debut. You gotta hear what he said next though, because he couldn't have been more right with his prediction.
He just finished the new Nirvana record, and we got to hear it on the 4th of July at his house, and it's just an amazing record. And it's the type of thing that's not only going to be it's not going to just be the album that Nirvana should have made because it's great, but it's the type of thing that's really going to put Butch on the map.
Of course, Billy was right about Nirvana, a band that would go on to both help and torment him over the years. Fun fact, did you know that Billy dated Courtney Love before she ended up with and married Kurt Cobain? But in all fairness, the Pumpkins did hire Butch first, so he's got some bragging rights there. Recording at Butch's Smart Studios in Madison began in December 1990. As a drummer himself, Butch really connected with Jimmy and helped elevate the drum sounds while pushing the band to get the best take. Often, Billy would have to sing a song upwards of 40 times, but that type of precision was what they needed to complete the record. While Butch was running the show, though, Billy was the one in charge. He completely took over the songwriting duties, and according to Butch, Billy even re-recorded the parts of both Darcy and James, which caused a lot of friction within the band. I mean, yeah, that's not the greatest way to make friends. Billy was pushing himself so far, he would admit to suffering a nervous breakdown. But after 2 months of recording and 2 months of mixing and mastering, they were done. Even though in their circles, grunge was becoming the fashionable thing to sound like, the Pumpkins did everything they could to avoid it. According to Billy, they were more interested in finding a balance between the shoegazer movement coming out of the UK at the time and the classic rock they grew up on. Grunge was not really in their vocabulary. They named the album Gish after the famous silent film star Lillian Gish. He would tell the Chicago Tribune, "When I was little, my grandmother used to tell me that one of the biggest things that ever happened was when Lillian Gish rode through their town on a train. My grandmother lived in the middle of nowhere, so that was a big deal." I just love that story. When it was released on May 28, 1991, copies of Gish didn't exactly fly off the shelves, but strong reviews in the Tribune, New York Times, and Rolling Stone, along with topping the college music charts and touring with the Red Hot Chili Peppers and a then unknown Pearl Jam, helped Gish eventually sell over 100,000 copies. At the time, it became the highest-selling independently released album of all time. That is until 1994, when The Offspring came along. The album's success was so big for Caroline that its parent company Virgin wanted to re-release it to sell even more copies. Of course, Gish didn't go on to become one of 1991's landmark albums the way Pearl Jam's 10 or Nirvana's Nevermind did, but that's okay, because Billy would take credit for their success. In an interview with Rolling Stone 30 years after the release of Gish, Billy would say, "People have tended to diminish the influence of the record. I remember having a conversation with Eddie Vedder and told me how much of an influence Gish had on their first record. And through the years, I've talked to many, many people who really pointed to Gish as the game changer in their mind about how to approach guitar and how to record. Obviously, the album had a lot to do with how Nevermind was recorded." I mean, okay, Billy, I guess they forgot to tell everyone else that over all these years, but okay. But Billy would have plenty to brag about in the years to come. After Smashing Pumpkins returned from an 18-month-long tour, they were feeling more like Smashed Pumpkins. They had nearly broken up following a disastrous performance at the Reading Festival in which Nirvana would play one of their most legendary performances. Billy smashed his guitar on stage in frustration, and according to legend, a piece of it hit their record label boss in the head. When they got home, they fell apart. James and Darcy had ended their 4-year romance, and Jimmy had begun abusing drugs and alcohol. Billy, meanwhile, had sunk deep into his depression after breaking up with his girlfriend and losing his apartment. He was sleeping on a friend's floor and living in a parking garage. But he believed in the music and that Smashing Pumpkins could be the next big band to follow in the footsteps of Nirvana. A song they had recorded called Drown was included on the soundtrack in a new rom-com from Cameron Crowe called Singles that was set in Seattle and featured all of the cool grunge bands. But again, the Pumpkins were begrudgingly being lumped in with the grunge scene. Billy, though, had run into a wall. He had a bad case of writer's block, and he just couldn't come up with any ideas. He would tell Spin, "Here I'm going along in life. Gish comes out, is basically successful. People are telling me, you're going to be on your way. Everything's going to be great. And here I am. I'm suicidal, completely depressed. I hate myself. I hate my band. I reached such a point of depression that it was like, okay, I give up. I'm going to stop trying to be whatever I think I should be, whatever everybody wants me to be." And when I did that, that's when the songs started to come. When I finally let myself be what I am, then the music came to me, and it was a lot more powerful. The first of those songs was called Today, which he wrote at his lowest point, thinking it was funny to write a song that said today is the greatest day of your life. He played the demo to Butch and the band, and everyone loved it. So did their new label, Virgin. The rest of the songs then followed. Recording the album, however, was just as stressful. They brought back Butch Vig to produce, but Billy needed another 6 months to finish writing the album. When they finally went to Triclops, the studio in Atlanta they hired, Billy basically made it his home. He never left, and he essentially played every guitar and bass part on the record simply because he knew he was the better musician. He told Spin, I gave James and Darcy a year and a half to prepare for this record. I'm surrounded by these people who I care about very much, yet they continue to keep failing me. I say, I need this, I need that, and they don't do the job. And what it does, it makes me feel the same abandonment I felt as a child. He couldn't play the drums, however. That was up to Jimmy, who was out partying most nights and regularly hooking up with his dealer. It took an ultimatum from the band and a rehab stint to get Jimmy in shape to perform. After they had finished recording, both Billy and Butch were too exhausted to mix the album, so they brought in Alan Moulder, who needed more than a month to mix it. So in the end, the album was delivered a month behind schedule at a cost of over $250,000. While the band would be depicted as dysfunctional, with Billy appearing as this tyrannical leader, their second album, which they called Siamese Dream, was finally ready, and it was a masterpiece. Billy credits Butch Vig for helping the band have their big moment like he did with Nirvana. Here he is getting a little emotional in explaining that to YouTube host Rick Beato.
I think Butch loves us and loved us, loves us. And I think the way he repaid his love to us was, I'm going to make sure you guys get that opportunity. I'm going to go all the way. It makes me emotional because I get it now in a way as an adult that I wouldn't have as a child. I'm going to give you everything I have, including the gravitas of my buzz. I'm going to make sure that the Pumpkins get across the line too. And not turn you into Nirvana. Let the Pumpkins be the Pumpkins.
Almost immediately, however, the band bumped heads with their new label. Billy would tell Blender, I wanted Cherub Rock as the first single, they wanted Today. I mean, I created a monstrous, emotional piece of art an hour long, and the only thing people wanted to talk about was a song I wrote in 10 minutes. Billy got his way, though, and Cherub Rock introduced this new chapter for the band, a gorgeously evocative and grand-scale blast of alternative rock that immediately pegged Smashing Pumpkins as the successors to Nirvana's throne. Siamese Dream was an immediate smash hit both critically and commercially. Select magazine called it the most grand-scale, expansively passionate blast of music you'll hear this year. While 20 years later, Pitchfork would praise the album as the larger-than-life sound that would reshape rock for decades to come. Siamese Dream entered the Billboard album charts at number 10, while reaching number 3 in Canada and number 4 in the UK. Eventually, it would go on to sell more than 6 million copies. The album's success shot Smashing Pumpkins up to the top of the alternative music heap, making them the logical choice to headline the 1994 Lollapalooza tour. With Smashing Pumpkins, Beastie Boys, A Tribe Called Quest, Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, and Green Day on the bill, the tour became the biggest selling year for the traveling festival. But the general consensus was that the Pumpkins were not up to the challenge. Billy would call the tour absolutely, positively the most draining experience of my life. Many people felt their headlining sets were disappointing and just couldn't match the energy and fun vibe that the Beastie Boys brought to their set. In the book, Lollapalooza, the uncensored story of alternative rock's wildest festival, Billy admitted they weren't prepared to play for audiences full of people who weren't there to see his band. He said, you talk about going into Middle America at the height of MTV in 1994, and I was 26 or 27. I was not prepared for all that. So we're headlining what became historically the biggest Lollapalooza ever, and there they are. They're the same football players who used to bully us in the hallways. I looked at it as like, no, you're the enemy, and we're here to take you on. After Lollapalooza, the Pumpkins got off the road. They were worn out and weary. They finished the year by releasing a B-sides album called Pisces Iscariot, which ironically enough would chart even higher than Siamese Dream, reaching number 4 in the US, obviously a sign of their growing popularity. Billy was also hard at work on a new album, one that was bigger, bolder, and far beyond people's expectations, and possibly even the band's last. Talking to Rolling Stone about the band's goals for their third album, Billy said, after Siamese Dream, I really felt that we had no future, that it was the end of the line as far as the band went emotionally and creatively. I felt that I had completely stretched my abilities beyond the beyond. Also, I started to feel my age, so I said, let's approach this like it's our last album. Because it either will be our last album or it will be our last album as people know the Smashing Pumpkins. And it was a very freeing decision to make. Billy would admit that the only thing that kept him going through the Siamese Dream tour was making another album. After Lollapalooza, he only took 3 days off before he jumped into writing new songs. They felt they had grown too close to Butch Vig to bring him back, so to co-produce the album with Billy, they brought in Flood and Alan Moulder, who had mixed Siamese Dream. Flood forced the band to spend more time together, jamming, songwriting, and rehearsing before they actually recorded a note. To avoid what happened with Siamese Dream, they adopted a more organic approach, allowing both James and Darcy to write, arrange, and play more on the record. Here's Billy talking to Much Music about Flood's role.
I think that we reached a point where the perfectionism and the search for the kind of musical grandeur had kind of run its course. And that's like a self-fulfilling prophecy where you continue to try and out-top yourself with perfectionism. You hit a dead wall. And he kind of took our noses and led it back to where we started, which was like just total, more of how we understand the band live, which is more of a visceral kind of emotional state. And he said, let's try and get this on record. And by doing that, it seemed to open up a whole different kind of way of recording, a way of working, and things like that. And then just the kind of subtle embrace of technology as a new aspect of rock and roll.
The Pumpkins wanted to prove that they weren't like the other bands of their generation, and instead chose to expand their sound beyond the guitar-driven sound that was expected of them. So they brought in some piano, synthesizers, a live orchestra, and various studio weirdness to make an album of songs that Billy said will be totally misunderstood by plus 30-year-old rock critics. After spending 10 months in the studio, they had collected 28 songs and planned to release it as a double album, something that was not very normal and not very cool to do in the 1990s. And they knew they would hear it from the fans, the critics, and their peers. Here is Billy talking to Much Music, explaining why they made a double album.
I tried not to concentrate on singles. I tried to concentrate on the album being good. I thought if the album was really good, then it would take care of itself. I thought if it was a bloated kind of piece of work, or extremely self-indulgent, or the musings of some demented 28-year-old, that it really wouldn't have any connection, and we would suffer a lot for it. So, that all being said, I'm not really worried about it.
They called this epic piece of music Mellon Collie and the Infinite Sadness, but it wasn't a concept album. Billy refused to describe it as such, despite the fact that in one interview, he did call it a concept album about the human condition of mortal sorrow. Billy told Us Weekly, the album's title is a generational commentary on life. It's split into day, dawn to dusk, and night, twilight to starlight. Symbolically, it's like the cycle of living and dying, and attempting to live and going out of your way to die. That sure sounds like a concept to me. Much Music inquired about the two sides when the band visited the station's environment.
It's divided into two parts, Dawn Till Dusk and Twilight to Starlight. How did you determine which songs fell into which time period?
Right. Well, we put the really good ones on one and the bad ones on the other.
Really?
Really?
Which are the really good ones according to you?
See, you have to guess that part, though.
Okay.
Because everyone has a different opinion.
Yeah.
The label, meanwhile, was worried. They tried to convince the band to release it as two separate albums, but the Pumpkins refused. Would Pumpkin fans buy an album that was twice the price as a typical CD? Virgin Records president Phil Corderero would tell Billboard the label had its concerns, saying, "My initial reaction was, oh no, a double CD. I knew what that meant in terms of being a marketing and merchandising nightmare. But we trusted that Billy was going to do the thing right, and he absolutely has delivered on it." As it turned out, both the band and label really didn't need to worry about it. Released on October 23rd, 1995, Mellon Collie and the Infinite Sadness quickly exceeded expectations. Naturally, reviews for a double album were mixed, but on the strength of the album's first single, the rage-filled Bullet with Butterfly Wings, Mellon Collie sold like hotcakes. It debuted at #1 on the album charts in America, Canada, and Australia, eventually going diamond, which signified more than 10 million copies sold. It would also be nominated for Album of the Year and Best Alternative Music Album at the 1997 Grammy Awards. Still, Billy wouldn't hold back in interviews when he was asked why they made a double album. Here he is justifying their decision to Much Music.
We've taken so much guff just for doing a double album. I mean, it's not like we made fun of anybody. And we took it upon ourselves to work hard and create this large body of work to stand for something, to stand for everything that we believe in. And people are offended by it. That's amazing.
Offended by the fact that you...
We have the balls to do it. That we have the whatever. It's considered conceit or pretension. What is pretentious about hard work? I don't.
Oh, one small thing about the album that could be construed as pretentious. After going by Smashing Pumpkins on their previous releases, the band decided to add "the" to their name, becoming the Smashing Pumpkins, which is how they originally called the band when they started. Apparently, Billy always intended on using "the" in the name, but somewhere along the way just forgot, I guess. The Smashing Pumpkins weren't really known as a singles band, but after Bullet with Butterfly Wings went to top 40, there was potential to capitalize on that commercial success. The next single would be unlike anything else the band had released. A wistful slice of synth pop boosted by a hypnotic drum loop and soft guitar riff. The song was called 1979, and if we've learned a thing or two throughout these episodes of Encore, surprise, surprise, the song almost didn't happen. As Billy would tell it in the album's liner notes, we had the track and we all thought it was a good song, but every time we tried to play it as a band, it sounded like the Rolling Stones, and not in a good way. It came out too bluesy. The band couldn't nail the song, and co-producer Flood was running a tight ship. He told the band either they finished it then and there, or it didn't make the album, which was being completed the next day. So Billy went home that night, wrote some more lyrics, recorded a demo, and the very next day, D-Day as they called it, the band recorded a version that sounded pretty much the same as the demo. In just one day, 1979 would be the final piece of the puzzle to finishing Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness. Billy revealed the song's inspiration came from a diverse range of influences, including Krautrockers Can, Europop, New Order, and Sonic Youth, who gave him the idea for the guitar riff. In the liner notes, he said, "There's all sorts of weird little pieces of influence that somehow come together and create one of those beautiful synchronicities where everything lined up perfectly." One of those weird little pieces is a fluttering vocal that appears after Billy sings his line. If you know the song, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So in an interview with Guitar World, Billy would clarify what that exactly was. The most frequently asked question about 1979 is, what is the ooh-ah-ah sound at the end of every phrase? Flood and I were tracking the song, and I started humming the oohs like a melody line. I sang them to tape, we sampled the pertinent ones, electronically manipulated them, and looped them against the drum beat. One of my favorite songs from the album. You know, I've always wondered what that sound was. Now we know. But there was some meaning behind 1979 that was deeper than most of the songs he had written before. Here he is explaining the origins of 1979, which go back all the way to when he was a kid.
In 1984, my home life was falling apart. I had a job. I was a pizza delivery guy. I'd inherited the old family car, which was falling apart and had ball tires. I remember sitting at a specific stoplight. I can take you back to the corner like it was yesterday. It was raining, as it often does in Chicago. It was a cold, dreary day. I was sort of miserable in the car, and I was stuck at the spotlight. And there was a particular feeling that I got, which was like in the rearview mirror of my life was youth, childhood, and it was about to go away. And in front of me was everything that I hoped to become, everything that I was hoping to do in life. And for some reason, in this exact particular moment, at this particular stoplights with the wipers going off in front of me, that's the feeling that I wrote the song of. So I wrote a poem, and I wrote these lyrics all out in sort of one go. I have the typed piece of paper somewhere in my archives. So what you actually hear me sing on the song is the poem that I wrote.
Billy would elaborate even further in an interview with the Chicago Tribune, calling the song a farewell to my youth. He added that while writing 1979, he dug into some memories from his teenage years, saying, "I remember being about 17, 18, this weird feeling of having a job and a car, and I could go anywhere I wanted, but I still had the tethers to home, to school. It's kind of a restless period with a lot of sexual energy, and you're stuck in fucking nowhere." That's the feeling I had writing the song. As for why he named it 1979, Billy would add, "I have no idea. I had to call it something." For the music video, the band wanted to capture the sense of nostalgia that lingered throughout the song. Originally, they approached Spike Jonze to direct after the success he had with Beastie Boys' Sabotage and Weezer's Buddy Holly. Spike's idea was said to have the Pumpkins wearing alien elephant masks, living in an alien hotel, set to a budget of over $1 million. But Spike was busy at the time. Can you imagine what that would have looked like? I kind of wish that they had just, made it when he had time. Anyway, instead, they brought in Jonathan Dayton and Valerie Ferris, who had directed the video for Siamese Dreams Rocket. Now, if you're a cinephile, you may know those names as the directors behind the Oscar-winning film Little Miss Sunshine, as well as many other iconic music videos. Billy wanted to depict an idealized teenage world where bored kids drive around, cause some mayhem, go to wild parties, and fall in love. Aside from Billy sitting in the back of the car singing, the Pumpkins only made brief and funny cameos in the video. James is the annoyed clerk at the convenience store. Darcy is an irate neighbor, and Jimmy is a donut-eating cop. Once they had finished shooting, a problem arose, and this sounds like the start of, I don't know, some sort of road trip comedy? I'm not sure. The tapes featuring the key footage of the band were left on top of a roof of a car that unknowingly drove away. They were lost forever, so the band had to return to Los Angeles and reshoot a scene in which they play live at a raucous house party. The music video for 1979 is that rare moment when the visual element really captures the exact feeling of the song. Billy would admit the video was, quote, the closest we've ever come to realizing everything we wanted, while also calling it out for being his favorite Pumpkins music video. It was also award-winning, taking home the Moon Man for Best Alternative Video at the 1996 MTV Video Music Awards. In fact, in 1979 was such an immaculate achievement that it received a sequel, both in song and video. Their next album, 1998's Adore, would feature a song called Perfect, which served as a companion to 1979, echoing a similar song structure built on synthesizers and a drum loop. The band brought back Dayton and Ferris to direct the video, as well as most of the young actors from 1979, which saw them return to the same roles to give an update on the characters' lives. Spoiler alert, they all became miserable as adults. Even though the Smashing Pumpkins are often thought of as a loud rock band, 1979 is widely considered the band's most popular song, to the point where some people think it's the only good Smashing Pumpkins song. Here is podcaster Zach Sang asking Billy about that.
How does it make you feel when people come up to you like, hey, I love 1979? And you're like, of course you do. And it's
I don't think about it like that. What's weird to me is most people are pretty sweet. And if they say they like a song, or they got married to it, all good. What's always weird to me is it's almost always dudes. Okay, 97% of the time, this is the conversation. Yo, man, I really like 1979. Oh, thanks. Your other stuff, not so much. It's like, and I'll say, do I need to know that?
Okay, so 1979 might stand out from most of the Pumpkins material, but I guess its ability to appeal to non-fans is what's made it so beloved. To date, it's their highest charting song, reaching number 12 in the US and number 2 in Canada. The song was also nominated for Record of the Year and Best Rock Performance by a Duo or Group with Vocal at the Grammy Awards in 1997. And it isn't even close when it comes to Spotify streams from the band. 1979 is closing in on 800 million streams, almost 300 million more than the next song, Bullet with Butterfly Wings. On top of that, it has more than twice as many views than any other video of theirs on YouTube, with 267 million at the time this was written, plus one from me just now. Speaking of the video, a few years back, NME wrote an op-ed arguing that 1979 is the greatest music video of all time because it reminds us of the indelible power of adolescent freedom. It's no wonder then that in 2020, Gen Z pop group Why Don't We not only sampled the song, but basically used the bed track for their single Slow Down. It just goes to show how much of a pop song 1979 truly is. When they released their song, Why Don't We's Daniel Seavey said, 1979 is such a beautiful song. It's so universal. Anyone can listen and enjoy it. It's hard to argue with that. My name is Ruby Carr. Thanks for listening to another episode of Encore. New episodes out every Thursday. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a moment.
Encore is an iHeartRadio Canada podcast. Download the free iHeartRadio app and subscribe.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming.